Okay, everyone. Hi, I'm Sophia. I'm the president of the Armenian Pre-Health Society. We have two really great guest speakers today, Gary Shahinian and Dr. Robert Shahinian, two incredible Armenian brothers. Today, we're going to have our Armenian Pre-Health, our Pre-Med Society, our Pre-Health representatives moderate the event. If you guys have any questions, feel free to turn on your mic and speak, or you can drop the questions in the chat feature. Laura and Emily, the floor is yours now.
Hello, so I'm Emily. I'm one of the pre-med representatives. If you guys have a question, like they said, drop it in the chat. And thank you to our guest speakers for coming in today to talk to us.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Hi, I'm Laura. I'm also a pre-med rep. I also am president for the APS chapter here at Berkeley. I want to thank our guest speakers for taking time out of their, what I'm assuming are very busy schedules, to talk to us and guide us, hopefully on the same path. So if you have any questions, just let us know.
Not all at once.
I think we can start if either one of you want to give us a little background about you guys and give us like your general path into medicine.
Sure. I can start us off on that. So we both grew up in the Valley, North Hollywood area, both immigrated from Armenia. I went to like public schools in the area, and then I went to community college right after high school. I tell people it's for the money. In reality, it was to didn't get accepted anywhere. Let's be completely honest. And then I got my stuff together, transferred to UCLA for undergrad, and then after UCLA, I took a gap year, did a little bit of cancer research, and then applied to medical school. Went to UCLA for medical school. I did a lot of research at UCLA. And then I applied to a urology residency, and now I'm at UC Davis. So I'm at a 5-year surgery residency.
Yeah, and I guess for me, like we're basically twins. We don't look like twins, but for most part, like the path is going to be pretty similar. Same high schools. I mean, same schools for the most part. Yeah, I think we all. Also, I went to Valley College for 1 year, transferred to UCLA. After that 1 year, I was there for 3 years. Pretty similar path. I didn't really consider anything else, like UC Irvine. I got in out of high school, but it wasn't even an option. It was kind of like UCLA or bust, to be honest. I wasn't even like the cloud thing. It was just honestly in my mind the only thing that existed really. It was just kind of like you go there. That's where all the Armenians go. And then yeah, basically finished Valley, went there, and then I took a gap year too between undergrad and med school. I'm at University of Colorado now here in Denver. That's basically it. I also did some research in undergrad. And I did neurology research on like seizures and TBIs, traumatic brain injuries. That was my research a little bit, but yeah, pretty similar stories for the most part.
So before we hop into all the questions we have set aside, do we have anybody who's here who have questions?
I have a question actually. So did both of you each take just one gap year, or was just one?
Mm-hmm.
Just one for us, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And one more question to follow up, but like based off of your experience, just me personally talking to different medical school students, I've seen that like, so far any of the UCLA medical students I've spoken to all take 2 gap years, not all of them obviously, but the ones I've spoken to. Based on your opinion, do you think taking more or less gap years makes a difference in where you end up going later on?
I think so, a little bit. Yeah, I mean, we'll see what Robert thinks, but I think anything that makes your application more competitive just helps you, like, open up your options a lot, your option set a lot. And sadly, like 2 gap years will make you a lot more competitive if you're obviously using them. If you're just like, working at like, a random job that's not medical related and doing no extracurriculars, no MCAT studying, like nothing's happening, then it's no difference. But like if you're doing research, getting one publication, even being on a paper with something, any project that you work on, starting an org, whatever it is, like that's all going to help you. And it's hard to get all that in 3 years. Let's be honest. Like if you apply like with no gap years, there's no chance I would have my MCAT done or any leadership roles or like even teaching as an LA by like third year of undergrad. There's no way. So gap years just help you accumulate like stuff on your resume, which is important.
Yeah, I agree for the most part. I think that the most important thing that Gahan said was that you need to make use of that gap year. It can't just be you took a gap year and you took your MCAT. Like that is, if anything, that might be just kind of written off as like, okay, you just took it for the MCAT. Like that's not a good enough reason to take a gap year. A gap year should be very productive. When I was reviewing applications for med students at UCLA, people, a majority of applicants, I think it's becoming the norm, almost the norm, to see gap years. People going straight through, not as common as it used to be. Taking a gap year is pretty prevalent now, but the catch is that these people who take gap years, they're either publishing like crazy, like they actually have abstracts, publications, they go to conferences, they're networking, they're kind of developing their academic portfolio. It's not just them taking a gap year to kind of travel. They do that too. A gap year is relaxing. It's not like undergrad, but you got to make use of that time. You got to be working like 40 hours a week on something. And believe it or not, 40 hours a week is not that much. You can be doing a lot of other things with your free time. I'm telling you this from personal experience, where I'm now working 78, 80 hours a week, and I'm still expected to like live a normal life. So, but my point being that, like, in that gap year, you need to do something. Either start a project, work on something, start a company. I don't care what you do. And it really doesn't have to be medicine related. It just has to show drive, something that you are willing to do. I saw people who, like, they start a tech startup, or like they're like some president of some company or something. Like, it might seem trivial at the moment, but in the end, it looks good on an application.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, starting a company probably wasn't trivial, but like you guys aren't going to do that. But like, I would say just do whatever. You would know if you're working hard. Like, you'll know if you're working hard, and if you're not working hard, then it's not worth your time. Basically, that gap year. If you're not like struggling through something.
Yeah.
For example, MCAT only is probably not a good reason. But if your MCAT was going to be a 501, but it could be a 512 or a 513, like, take the time to get that score. But yeah. But
also, there's one last thing I want to add on that is, this is becoming more common in medical education and training, is that people take more time off. But so you got to factor that in. Like, you go through 4 years of undergrad. If you make it through 4 years, some people do 5. You take a gap year, okay, 1, 2. Then you do med school 4 years. But now it's becoming more and more common, at least at UCLA. I noticed people were taking another gap year in med school, like a research year. So now for med school, instead of 4 years, became 5 years. And God forbid you choose to do a surgical residency, you are now going to do 5 years minimum. Not to include if it's general surgery and they have like 1 to 2 years of research built in, and then a fellowship on top of that. Which is like, your medical training just from medical school onwards can become, at a minimum, on the best case scenario, to 7 years after undergrad, but it can balloon up to 13 years. So you got to keep that in mind when you're taking these gap years. It's like, 1 year, not too bad, but what if you take another 5 in would take another one med school and another one fellowship?
Thank you. Very helpful.
I have a question. So at schools like Berkeley, grade deflation is any STEM major's biggest issue. Our professors believe and love grade deflation. So what are some tips you guys have on how we can combat that with our resume and our applications?
Yeah, I can go first on that one. You can't really combat it other than just trying your best. Like, you just need to do whatever you possibly can to get the highest grade possible. I mean, obviously within the parameters of your life's goals. Like, if you still want to have friends, if you still want to go out, if you still want to, which you should, by the way. Like, and also people realize that, like, admissions people, especially from big name schools like UCLA, UC Berkeley, like Harvard, like, they know what the school's like reputation is. Like, they're not dumb. Like, they know that it's a hard school, and you're gonna know that you worked harder to get X grades that you got. No one's gonna hold that against you. But if you're scoring like in the 20th percentile of your class, like, only you know what that is. Or if you're, or vice versa, in the 80th percentile of your class, in the top range, like, that's what you are. That's what you're scoring at. Like you should just compare yourself to yourself yesterday. It sounds kind of corny, but just like try to improve or stay at your already good level if you're already good. But the short answer is like they know what different schools are like. So if you go to a school that infights, they'll know that. If you go to a school that's just hard and a UC that's competitive, they'll know that too, and that's fine. Like
when we were going through applications, we knew that the East Coast schools, A from Harvard is not really equal to an A from UC Berkeley, UCLA. We know the A that came out of UC Berkeley, UCLA had to work a lot harder than the one that came out of Harvard, where they give out gentlemen's A's. You know, it's different. We also know that California, unfortunately for everybody in this group, California pumps out by far the most competitive pre-med students by like a mile from any other state. So programs are aware of that you know, the schools in California are very competitive. The grade deflation is a very real thing at the UC system. So people are aware of it, but I don't want to make you complacent and feel like, oh, it's okay if I don't, you know, do well. No, that's unfortunately, that's not the case. Grade deflation is a thing, but enough people are getting A's where they will take all the spots in medical school if you let them.
Great, thank you so much.
Mohammed? Oh,
My bad. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, what's up, Mohammed? It's been a long time, bro.
What's good? So you're still in medicine, I see.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I'm just kidding. It's great.
Emily, you were saying something?
I was just gonna ask like basic MCAT question. So I was gonna ask what the studying process was like for you guys when you guys took it, all that.
The MCAT studying process was a really, really hard process. It was one of the hardest times in med school for sure. I think the biggest things that I can say is obviously plan for it well ahead of time. I'm not saying study for it years, like, you know, a year in advance, but like you should definitely like know when you're going to take it roughly and plan a study schedule just before that. And again, only you really know based off of your performance in like science classes and just based off your performance in general in school, like where you're at or what your goals are for your score range, and set yourself enough time accordingly, like 4 months, 5 months, maybe even just 2 months, 3 months, whatever that might be. And I don't want to get too deep into the Anki world, but like there's some pretty cool like studying tips and strategies that you could use. Anyone here heard of Anki in undergrad? Yeah, okay. Hell yeah, this is amazing. How times have changed. Just 2 years ago, no, okay. Yeah, Anki is your best friend. You should use it like as much as you possibly can for the MCAT. And also Reddit is a really good resource for like study tips, links, advice, and also just like content, like just mnemonics to like learn certain equations with, certain like topics with. So I would use Reddit and Anki to your advantage, and practice questions, like by far practice questions. Pay for a QBank if you need to, but like there's free ones online as well. But the more practice questions you could do, the better off you are, for sure.
Yeah, I'll let Godon's answers kind of permeate the MCAT stuff. I'm pretty far away from MCAT.
Yeah, and also, yeah, but really the practice questions are huge. So, and practice tests, obviously, that goes along with it. Do those as many as you can. I can't understate that enough. And Nada, did you have a question?
Yes, hi. So speaking of MCAT, I get my score tomorrow and I'm kind of nervous because I just don't feel like I did my best. And I wanted to know, like, what's your take on retaking it? I guess what I've heard is as long as you're showing improvement, then it should be okay.
As long as you're showing improvement, but you know, within reason, like if it's 1 or 2 points, that's not improvement. Like when I was reading applications, nobody really saw that, but if I was to see that, it wouldn't be really impressive. It's got to be like, you know, 8, 10 points, like a sizable improvement. So if you get like a 510, unless you're gonna get a 520 or like there's like a 518, I don't know if I would. You're taking a big gamble by retaking the MCAT with a score like that.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know if Glenn wants to add anything to that, but.
Oh no, well, I mean, first of all, good luck tomorrow. You probably did a lot better than you thought you did, but everyone feels like they did really poorly when they come out of the MCAT. No one comes out going like, I'm gonna kill it tomorrow when I get my score. But I will say that, yeah, improvement's huge. But of course, like Robert said, like if you had a 501, for example, and you got a 504 on the next one, you definitely improved, and that's, you should be proud of yourself, no question. But like, that's not going to make you any more or less competitive. And also your goals matter too. Like again, if your goals are Harvard Med School, which is like a 5, like I don't know, 18 MCAT or whatever it is, and you got like a 511, you're probably gonna want to retake that if that's your really like your level goal, you know? But if your goal is, for example, if you want to go to like a lot of DO schools that are like 507, 506 averages, like the top ones, even most are lower than that, you're probably perfectly fine with a 510 applying, and you should be very confident in that application and go through with it. But it really has tailored to your goals. What score, the score you get and like the goal you have to match. And that's just like the reality of it. So you got to be honest with yourself, and also know the other strengths of your application as well. Like if you're mainly sort of science and like stat heavy and you're relying on your MCAT, then you might want to take it again if it's not what you want. And if your MCAT's not the key of your application, then don't worry about it. Be confident anyways.
Thank you.
So it looks like we have a question in the chat. Anik said that she's applying and hasn't heard anything regarding interview invites. Should she be worried? And she made sure to apply to schools that had she had an average and competitive GPA and MCAT with.
I wouldn't be like too worried right now, crazy worried right now. It's only October, and I think things got pushed back. I don't know about how the like how COVID's impacted this cycle. I know last cycle it did, but if things have gotten pushed back, even less reason to worry. But I wouldn't worry too much yet. And regarding the applying to average like GPA and MCAT, I applied to like 40 schools. I just literally took my like average and just like took up and down from there and applied. The average and like competitive GPA, that's a good, like you're in the right range if you did that. But all you can do right now is wait. I mean, if you were worried, for example, like this is kind of sound a little curt or like rude, but like strict, but what are you gonna do about it now, really, right? So focus on enjoying your time right now. Keep working towards whatever you're working on, if that's extracurriculars, work, school, whatever it is. Keep doing that, and just wait, be patient, but keep working hard, just in case. No, don't quit on like your extracurriculars.
Yeah. October. This is early October, so it's still, I would say, early in the game where I'm not going to tell you to, get your next year application ready or start thinking about it. So I don't think you need to do that yet. But come December, it's might be time to start thinking if you haven't heard anything yet.
Yeah, even if it's not over, by the way, even if it's not over,
Yeah,
you still got to start thinking about it, because like June is when the primary opens up. That comes fast. Like if you wait till like the last interview possible in March, like you have 3 months left to do something about it. Like don't be that person, basically.
Yeah, I'm not saying December is the end. It's just that it's getting like transfers start slipping. So
Exactly. Yeah.
So in regards to interviews, what questions did you guys find were the most commonly asked questions, and how do you go about answering those?
You can go ahead, Rob.
I was gonna say the one big question that I don't think people really put much thought into, or at least if you do, it's kind of like a very superficial answer, is that why medicine? And by that, when I ask that, it's why medicine and not, I don't know, a PA? Why not nursing? Why not an LVN? Like, well, not LVN, NP. Why not any of those other things? Because if you just say I want to be a healthcare provider, wonderful. There's very many different routes to become a healthcare. If you just want to care for people, none of those are unique to being a physician or a doctor. And each person has their own reason for why they want to do it. But the core of that answer should be leadership. Essentially, that's one of the biggest things that separates physicians in the hospital from other care providers, is that we lead the team. Whatever team we're on revolves around our decisions and our decision making. So that's something that you should usually have in your answer, but there's a lot of other personal reasons for pursuing to be a doctor.
Yeah, I think that definitely is the hardest question, that you're gonna like always think about. How am I gonna sound unique? How am I gonna make this sound like I'm different than other applicants? And to a certain extent, by the way, like I completely agree with Robert. Like you should not be saying like I want to help people, because it's kind of implied. Like everyone knows. Like you don't have to say that. Everyone kind of knows that. Don't mention it. Talk about And we'll kind of get into this later, but like, there's more to being a doctor than just helping people. Obviously, I think the leadership component of it all. I think the curiosity and like the research aspect of it, which we hopefully will get into when we get to talk about research, is. I think I can't speak for Rob, but we're both pretty similar. We didn't expect this much research, I think, in medical, or like how much research is emphasized in medicine once you actually get to medical school. Like intellectual curiosity, learning, and like science is actually a lot heavier than we thought. We thought you just like go to medical school, graduate, and like do doctor stuff, like give pills. No, it's a lot of research and a lot of like learning, which you should talk about that too if you're interested in that. I think one of the harder questions that I found was tell me about yourself, which sounds kind of easy because it's about yourself, but like you never know how to answer that question. Like no one like knows how to answer that question. But I would the only advice I can give for that one is the answer that you give is what tells them something about you, right? Like if you start off by saying, well, I'm usually the best in my class. I score, usually the highest in my classes, and I have a really great MCAT score because I worked hard for it. I'm pretty, organized. Now I know what that means about you. If you say, well, I grew up in a small town in, I don't know, Ohio. So, to my mom and my dad and two brothers, like when you start talking about family immediately, they know that you think about that. Those are your values that you talk about when you hear the tell me about yourself question. So that's one of the most common questions you'll get on the interview trail. And the way you answer it tells something about you, and you choose what you want to portray, basically. You choose that, what you want to give off to that interviewer.
Emily, I think you had your hand up.
I did have my hand up. I was going to ask for the question that you guys talked about where they ask you like why medicine. When answering that question, should you keep it specific? For example, if you have an idea of what type of physician you want to become, should you specify in there to make it more unique to you, or should you keep it general? Because obviously you don't pick exactly what you want to do until your third or fourth year, I think. So what's your advice on that?
Yeah, I mean, if you have a specialty in mind, by all means, feel free to share it. Just
I'll be
don't make it.
you need a better try than
Alex, I think you're unmuted. There you go.
That was pretty quick. Just want to make sure that whenever you talk about a specialty that you want to go into, you don't make it sound like that's the only thing you could ever imagine yourself doing, because that is going to sink your application like before you even finish your sentence, because it's going to show that you're closed-minded, that you're not willing to consider other things. But you should say like, I have an interest in this because that, X, Y, and Z. However, I am excited to begin medical school and explore all the specialties that exist.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Just show that you're mature and you realize like that you're going to change likely over the years. But if it's more, if you're going to talk better or speak better about something that you're interested in, talk about it. It'll sound like you're really interested in it. Sounds good.
Thank you.
So I know both of you mentioned that you did research in your undergrads, and I believe some in med school. For upcoming undergrads and undergrads getting ready to apply, do you recommend more wet lab, dry lab, or just any kind of research would work?
I think at that stage, honestly, both are perfectly fine. I think the effort that you put into research and I think your involvement in the research. I didn't appreciate that. I was a pretty typical pre-med in my mentality of like, as long as I have those hours in, that that line is filled on the application of research, I'm good. But it's like, no, like they actually do. They don't care if you spent 3 years at a lab, and whenever they have a prompt saying like, which projects that give me an example of an independent project that you work on, and you're like, I just like made buffers in basic science lab. It's like, no, we don't care about that. Like if you have one lab that you could work in even for a year and actually have like your own independent project or be a part of the project in a meaningful way and like actually produce something with it, that's a lot more meaningful than just like being in a lab. But in terms of research in general, it's pretty important, and like we would both probably recommend it.
Yeah, I mean, when I was when reviewing applications, there was a big difference between like active participant in the lab or just passive participant. You don't want to be a passive participant. You don't want to just be there like pipetting stuff. Like I'm gonna be honest, that's what I did in my research, and one, it's incredibly boring, and two, you don't learn anything. What you want to do is work on a research project that you can maybe submit to like a conference, get a poster out there. Because look, a lot of applicants have research on their application to check off the box. but very few of them can talk about their research in detail or have something like meaningful to show, like a poster. A poster is a big deal. Even as a med student, like, I mean, depending on the specialty, like submitting a poster is like, oh wow, you're like, that's a real task that you did. You did something that's unique enough that a conference is going to accept it and portray it. So yeah, research, wet, dry, I don't care what kind of research you do, as long as it has some sort of results that you can put on your CV.
And does it have to be STEM related or can it be anything?
Anything is probably fine.
Yeah, I just answered in the chat. Like, it's like most research is probably going to be STEM fundamentally. Like, if you're doing research in like sociology, that's still very valuable. I mean, like, research is science inherently, like, right? Like, research isn't under science. Science, like, is by definition involves research. So I think it's more of the idea of curiosity. Like, are you curious about a question, and do you learn the methods that are required to like solve that question? It's not going to be groundbreaking, but it's going to be. The point is that it's curiosity and research.
To be fair, though, if you do research in another field, a natural question is going to arise: why are you here? If you start doing research in psychology, and I specifically say psychology and not psychiatry, the question may arise if it looks too much like behavioral stuff that you're doing. It's going to be like, why are you now pursuing a clinical psychology degree instead, if this is like your passion? If you're doing, research in like gender studies, like these are things that, yeah, it's research on paper, but a medical school admissions committee is going to be like, wonderful, why are you applying to medical school?
And everything is in context, obviously, of your overall application. Like, if you're expecting to be research heavy and that's your research, then it's like, okay, like, no, like, you're really not really research heavy if that's your topic.
Because we've had applicants who, we talk about research, but volunteerism, community service, these things are actually crucial, because when an applicant comes in and they're like this truly amazing researcher, another awkward question, even though it's like science research, medicine research, is like, why not a PhD? Why the MD aspect of it?
Yeah,
because there is a fine line between an MD and a PhD. If you're applying to an MD PhD program, that is very different, and you should be a stellar researcher, and people understand why you're in MD PhD because it's part of the program. But if you're just applying to just an MD program, questions are going to come up if you're this star researcher, like why aren't you doing a PhD?
Yeah. So. And we'll get into it soon, hopefully, but like this is in line with the theme of like, oftentimes people ask like, what should I do? Like, what should my application be? Like, how should I prepare my application? And like, I think the most broad answer is things should make sense. And if they don't make sense altogether, like that's a problem, And if you can explain why you're doing that kind of research, but why you're still interested in medicine, very compelling reasons, that's fine. Again, it's fine. It's research, but like things have to be compelling. Like you have to actually like persuade them that you want to be a doctor and not just make money and graduate.
Okay, I'm going to ask my question. So in terms of personal statements, because that's like such a big part of your application, it's like, who are you as a person? What would you guys say is like the best approach to writing your personal statement, or how to go about it, pretty much?
So personal statements, I want to say this early on. The further along you get in your career, the less important they get. And med school is that middle point where the personal statement starts to waver a little bit. Trust me, it's not like undergrad where your personal statement was who you are and like everything about you. Because let's be honest, what history do you have high school? Like that's nothing. So your personal statement defined you. When you apply to medical school, the personal statement, sure, it's important. You should write a good personal statement, but it will likely not make your application unless you have a truly like compelling, heartbreaking story, like something really out of the blue. Personal statements probably won't make you, a star, but they definitely could hurt you. So you don't want to put anything, like you don't want to write a poor personal statement, but your effort should be on your overall application, like all the work you've done. The personal statement really is just like wrapping it all at the end and like kind of putting a little bow on top. It's your years of experiences that are going to make or break your application, not your personal statement.
Yeah.
So do not harp on your personal statement being like this, oh my God, it's everything about me. Like, it's a summary kind of, it's just like one snippet in your big holistic review of your application.
Yeah. And I'm going on the same note. Think about it earlier. Like, don't write it. I'm not saying write it in like sophomore year, but like think about your entire like path to applying to medical school and try to remind yourself of like, what is the story that I'm trying to tell them? Obviously, your story not everyone's story is going to be like my, mother had like stage 4 cancer and my father passed away of this, and like I grew up in like in a trailer park, and like it's like no, and those are very unique stories. Your story can be like, I just grew up in the valley, and like I had this, don't talk about that, but like it's okay if you are that person, right? Talk about your reasons for going to medicine, and again, it's not gonna make it or break it if you put in the work in volunteering, in research, and all those extracurriculars. Just tie them in slowly, paragraph by paragraph, into your overall story, and just say, I want to be like, why you want to be a doctor, and write it as 1 page. It's all it is. 1 page about that, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And ask for a lot of help, obviously. But keep in mind who's helping you, obviously. Like, take that with a grain of salt, each person that you're asking. But, ask for some feedback from people and just take your time writing it. Start early, for sure. Start early. Not saying freshman year, but like, it's 3 months out at least. You should be writing your personal statement.
So another question we have is, like as we're preparing for the MCAT, people either say take a prep course, don't take a prep course, do self-study, get a tutor. What are your guys' opinions on that?
Self-discipline.
Yeah.
Honestly, it truly comes up to your own self-discipline.
Yeah. I think if you can just make yourself a hard worker and disciplined for just like 3 months, like 4 months, like I'm talking like 8 to 4 studying, like whatever it is, have a schedule and just stick to it consistently with like Anki and like practice questions. Those courses are just discipline. That's all they are. They just like discipline you. And in this day and age, especially, like you have every opportunity to like for like outlines, for high yield topics, Reddit. You have like these practice questions that are already given to you in practice exams. Just take those and make up your own schedule and use Reddit. Again, use Reddit to your advantage. It'll help you a lot.
Yeah, that's about it.
Hey, yeah, Nicolette. Question.
Hi, quick question. In terms of secondaries, because I know those come in really quick, and I think I've heard there's like a really short turnaround for when those have to be submitted. Do you suggest, I mean, probably, but do you suggest like starting those early on? And are like the prompts available ahead of time, or is there kind of like a generic outline of potential?
Yeah. Basically, every single prompt is already ready. Like they're all online. You can go on Student Doctor Network to find them. You could find them just on like Shah Masyan's counseling website. Any of those counseling, they all have them. And definitely write them early. Yeah, do not wait for them to come and then go, oh, let's see what they're going to ask me this year. They're going to ask you the same thing this year. So just write them like beforehand.
By the time you submit your application, you should have a lot of your secondaries like already worked on. And then by the time like applications are like being sent out, because it takes like 3 weeks to verify, 2 to 3 to up to 4 weeks to verify your application. You better be writing those secondaries in that time frame.
Exactly.
If you don't have those secondaries, you will be late.
Exactly. Yeah, definitely. Like the way I did it was once I submitted my primary, exactly that, like processing 3 weeks, whatever that was. You should not be like, to take a day or two off, but like then just again casually get into writing them. Like that shouldn't be like an MCAT grind. It should be more like a few hours a day max. Every day, well, you can write a lot of secondaries that way.
Honestly, this sounds like very gunnery, but like you could have your personal statement done by December before you apply. And by done, I mean like a draft of what you want done. And then so you're just like kind of tweaking things as you go, rather than trying to think of the whole thing in like a 2-month time period or like 1 month time period. You can work on this over 6 months. Like it's your personal statement. Like you can write that whenever you want. You don't have to wait until the last minute to do it all.
The question never changes. Yeah. Why do you want to go to medical school? That's it. That's the question. So you're right about it. And it's honestly less stressful that way than waiting for the last minute. You start learning how to be like not a procrastinator in medical school, but you could always learn that earlier, honestly, instead of going through that transition.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
So what made each of you want to go into medicine and focus on whichever field you're going into?
I
We're both
didn't
smiling.
think this is going to be a personal statement.
You want to start? You were
Sure,
first.
yeah. I mean, why medicine? I mean, honestly, a lot of it is growing up in like an Armenian household. I mean, let's be honest, every single person in this room, all you heard from your parents was doctor or lawyer. They didn't even offer engineer as an option. It was just doctor or lawyer. I like the science. I like my biology courses more. I chose that route for the most part. I'll like go and talk more about like why medicine. I'll talk to you guys about why I picked urology, given I'm already in residency. And for me, something that was important in medical school was choosing a specialty. This is probably a little distant for some of you guys, but like choosing a specialty that I can enjoy for the rest of my life. And it's like I wanted to do something surgical because I've always liked working my hands. It's been a passion of mine. I like technical work. I'm not one for the books. I'm not one to I was never like the nerdy guy, I guess. I don't know. I didn't like the thinking part of it as much as I like the physical aspect of like actually getting something done. So surgery was important for me, but at the same time, a surgeon's lifestyle sucks. So I wanted a surgical specialty where I can have kind of a nicer life afterwards. You guys don't think about, no, maybe you do think about that, but in medical school, they try to get that out of your head and make you think about like, oh, what you want to do, like what change you want in the world and all that stuff. But for me, it really did come down to I want a relatively more lifestyle specialty, but still surgical. And I want to do something where I can make a real impact in my patients' lives. How many of you guys even know what urology is? I should have started with this earlier on, but
I definitely didn't know what that was, even when he was like applying.
yeah, urology is a pretty neat, it's a very niche and small subspecialty. Just for context, there's only about 330 residency spots a year for urology. And I forget how many medical students there are, but there's 3 medical students could fill up all the residency spots of urology in the entire country. So it's pretty much treatment of kidney, anything where urine flows through, pretty much, as well as male and sometimes female genital organs. It really is, it's a surgical specialty. So anything that goes wrong with the kidney stone, bladder cancer, prostate cancer, anything like that, that is what urology focuses on. So you may ask why I chose to go down this thing. And it's because urologic surgery makes an incredible impact on patients' lives. I mean, for example, imagine if you were to pee 5 times at night. This might be a weird question, but can you imagine waking up 5 times at night to pee? You would get no sleep, right? But when you go to a urologist and we get that down to like once or twice, that sounds much more reasonable. And I mean, this may sound trivial, but until it happens to you, these people are literally insomniacs. They can't sleep. They go their entire life, like years, not sleeping until they come to a urologist and get that fixed. And not to mention like cancer, of course. Cancer, any type of cancer is life altering. So being able to treat that's a big deal. So yeah, but again, it's more or less a Monday through Friday specialty rather than weekends. You know, urology has emergencies, but they're relatively few compared to, I don't know, like general surgery or trauma. Gone, you want to?
Yeah, for the why medicine question, I mean, like, it's pretty simple. I'll give you a sort of blunt answer. The blunt answer is, well, in my case, I wasn't like Rob. I think Rob definitely wanted to be a doctor for like a lot longer than I did. I decided like, honestly, like sophomore year of college that I was going to for sure do it. Obviously I was, still doing well in school and trying to do well in school, getting good grades, but I wanted to get a PhD in psychology. Actually, when I first started at Valley College, I wanted to like, do some psych research. But I changed my mind, honestly, for pretty shallow reasons, mostly just because it's a great career. Same Armenian parents thing. Like you feel like you're supposed to do this kind of thing. You feel like it's a waste if you don't. It's kind of this bad mentality. The more I grow up, the more we sort of go through medicine, it's a much harder path than I think we realized before that. And again, I had the privilege of seeing him go through it a little bit, but still, like, you don't really realize how, like, miserable is a bad word because it's a negative connotation, just how hard.
Yeah.
Miserable is like a negative thing. Hard. It's just sheerly hard. It is throughout the entire process. But a lot of it was for, like the science part of it too. I really enjoyed my science classes of physics, chemistry, and like biology in undergrad. And I was like, I mean, this is a good field to do all that. And I like people a lot. And it sounds like the worst answer to the why medicine question, but it's true. Like, these are all the real reasons that you want to do it. So it's like a kind of mixture of all that, enjoying science, liking to work with people. But the biggest thing is actually helping people's lives. Like, I could have done a lot, like law school. My personality is probably more fit for law school, but I actually didn't want to do it because my end goal in life was not to win arguments and be aggressive and sort of like make my case. It was just to help people live better lives, and that's more suiting in medicine than it is in law, honestly.
And I do want to, like, we're being very honest with you guys about this. This is not something we would tell admissions directors, okay?
Yeah.
Like, being very, like, this is a more casual audience for us, and I just don't want you guys to leave here thinking that, you should go and say, I did it because my parents told me to, because I would reject your even though I did similar thought process, I would reject your application in a heartbeat if I saw somebody say that outwardly, like, so brazenly admit to that. Like, don't do that. But we do want to validate, like, some of the reasons. Like, you may go into something for not the purest and most, like, the best reasons at first, but sometimes those reasons do evolve and you end up truly loving what you do, even though you may not have initially pursued it for the most pure and honest reasons. Medicine is one of those, and it can go both ways. It is a double-edged sword. My Garan did say, he slipped and said miserable, or I don't know, he said difficult, but it can be miserable. It's not, trust me, as much as I, like, get tired and my brother hears me complain and really just have a rough time, I'm still, like, happy overall with what my decision. I would probably do it again. I would probably pick urology again as well. But you will be challenged in ways you've never been, and it's not like physically, it's not like someone's beating you, it's not like that, it's just mentally. You don't realize how much of your life goes away when you pursue medicine until you're, like, however many years I'm like 6 years, 4 years, like, in 5 years into it, and you're just like, wow, I'm nearing the end of my 20s and I'm still a student and I'm still learning and I'm still not, like, doing my own thing. And you're going to see your friends who took the advice and became an engineer. They're making their 6-figure salaries. They're working. They got that nice sports car. They're living their lives. They bought a house. Like, it's a very different lifestyle that you're going to live if you pursue medicine. And you need to be ready to sacrifice a lot to reach your goal. The promise is that it is rewarding at the end, but the process to get there is not rewarding at all. It is brutalizing. It's painful. In any other field, it would be illegal. Like, seriously, to work this much is it's like, it really is. Like, I mean, I don't think there's another field where it's, I mean, minus, like, executives at large companies, but who gives a shit? They get paid millions of dollars. They get to, it's fine if they work 80 hours a week, but, like, residency, when you work these, like, insane hours, and the kind of crappy thing is that no matter what you do, you're never good enough. You will never ever have a perfect day. Very rarely will you come home and be like, oh my God, that's such a good, like, I feel pumped. Like, that's not what's going to happen. You're going to come home, especially, like, intern year, as you can tell, you come home pretty beaten up, and we should probably maybe at the end take a second to talk about, like, the mental health aspect of this. It's something that is getting more attention now, but it's not talked about enough, because this shit sucks, and it can lead to depression. It can lead to, like, really bad thoughts, and everybody should be aware of that. And if you are struggling, that is a good reason to take a year off, by the way. For example, if that is, like, if you feel like you can't go anymore, like you are going to break, that is a good time to consider taking a year off. just to recollect your thoughts and think about why you're pursuing this and if it's something you really want to do. I don't want to understate the difficulty of going through this process. We don't get paid the salaries you end up getting paid for no reason. You will earn it. And if anybody tells you otherwise, they're full of shit. Like doctors do deserve the salaries that they're paid.
Yeah. On that note, I will say one thing, that when I was like an undergrad and I would hear like residents or doctors come and talk, I hated when they would say stuff like that, because honestly, it's like, it's kind of like you're not happy, but like I will be, kind of thing. And like it might be hard for you, but it's not gonna be hard for me. It's gonna be fun for me, and that's actually a healthy mentality to have, I think, like going into training. But it's just important to like realize that when you hear like a trend of people saying a certain thing like over time, whenever I was like an undergrad, I just didn't believe it. It was like stupid. I would hear the same thing nonstop and just like not believe it. I was like, nah, come on, like 300K a year, 500K a year. You're just like sitting in an office, you wear a white coat, you wear Patagucci's all day. Like it's nice, but like the path is really, really hard, and it takes like a lot of time. And again, I'm in the best part of my like training right now. Like you're just, you play soccer on the weekends, you're still studying, you're still in school, you know? It's when third year comes around, you're in the hospital. It's when residency, well, that guy's in, comes around, where it gets really hard. And the biggest thing is like, it is time, like the time's gonna go by anyway. So at least like use it to become a doctor, right? You've heard that phrase a lot, but the difference is like in that time, you're still like a human being going through a lot, you know, like in the process. And pre-med's like no joke either. It's not like just medical school. I think actually undergrad was a lot harder than the first 2 years of medical school was. I had a way harder time at UCLA, struggling a lot more than I was now in med school, but just this entire medical path is very stressful. So I think the mental health part, the gap year thing is huge. Like take care of yourself, take care of your friends. Don't be a gunner. Don't be like too intense. Don't be that person that like your friends can't talk to because like you're busy studying or you're, you know, going office hours. Like don't be that. Don't be that guy or girl. Like just don't. It's a very long path. Be as supportive as possible to yourself and to your friends, and just keep these things in mind about what the path looks like. So,
yeah, and at the end of the day, I mean, I do agree that I think medical school in a sense is a bit of a relief compared to undergrad, and really the reason is that once you're in medical school, it's almost guaranteed that you're a doctor. Like, congratulations. If you're coming from like a lower socioeconomic status, congratulations, you've officially like broken the ceiling, or like you are now not going to be poor, essentially. Like once you get into medical school, you've passed like that one big boundary. But so in a sense it is relieving, but whenever you do this entire path, like you do have to remember that you're doing it for the end goal. You're not doing it for the in-between. The in-between sucks, it's brutal, it's painful. But one of the most important things I was told during medical school, the beginning of my third year, was never compare, never like pick a specialty or what field you want to go into based on the residents or the trainees. Their lives suck. And that is not representative of the field itself. That's a short period. It's a brief period of their entire careers. My residency is 5 years, but my career, God willing, will likely be 35 to 40 years. So you have to keep that in mind. Like this training is long, but your career after that and the life you'll live, you know, everything going well, is much, much, much longer than this short period of time. I know it sounds like I'm saying two things at the same time. This is painful and it sucks, but at the same time, it's like amazing and great at the end. Both can be true. You will suffer for some time, but there is light at the end of the tunnel. It's a long tunnel, but there's light at the end of it.
Again, and also like, you know, when I was saying like, it was really hard to hear all this stuff whenever like, I was an undergrad. Keep in mind, like you're listening to a guy like right now who's like in the thick of it, you know, like Robert is in one of the toughest parts of his training right now. I'm smiling this whole time because like I talk to him every single day. Like we're like very, very close brothers. Again, we could have been twins. We're not, but we could have been. We're very close. So I hear a lot of like the inside stuff, but it's not all like that. Like the bigger takeaway is if you keep reflecting throughout your time in undergrad and you really are reflecting well, and you realize this is the path for you, like that's not going to stop you, but you should be ready for it. Some people are genuinely naive to it. You'd be surprised. Like a lot of people like in med school that I've met, like genuinely including myself to a certain extent, didn't realize what it's like until you actually get there. That's the worst thing. It's not knowing it's hard, but still doing it anyways.
Yeah.
It's not knowing that it's hard and doing it anyways, and then realizing, oh shit, wait a minute, like I have to actually work like a lot. Yeah. So
Yeah,
this
yeah.
is this is the important thing.
And these didn't really exist when I was applying. I actually I don't think I went to a single there were like not very many pre-med seminars, especially one tailored to like Armenian students. Like this is really nice. I'm like so happy to be able to do this for you guys because I didn't have this. I didn't know anybody in medicine when I was applying. I didn't really have any connections or like any of that social capital that you guys will hear it'll get thrown around more and more. So when some of you guys, when you go to med school, you will realize the value of social capital and how social capital wise, how poor we all were at some point. Like these people have these ridiculous connections. They have these ridiculous like amounts of professionals that surround them where not all of us do. The Armenian community, we're very bright, but we don't have that many professionals compared to some other communities. And I want this to be very crucial for you guys to, once you all make it, and I know you all are going to do extraordinary things regardless of what field you go into, whether you go into medicine or not. That's not the point of this. Is I want you guys to be able to remember to like kind of trickle back and like go back and help those who are following your paths or who are also like going through this entire process. Not everybody has that help and not everybody has those connections. So make sure to be open and offer it to everybody that you can.
Yeah. And going back to that like question earlier about like, you know, how to answer that why in medicine and how we were talking about like kind of bad answers that we're giving, the honest answers that we're giving versus the answers that you will give to an admissions committee. It kind of comes from this too. Me and Rob don't know everybody's stories here, where everyone comes from, what your backgrounds are, your families, professional, whatever it is. Like, but a lot of people in medicine do not grow up in like the Panorama City or like the Valley or like in like Monville lives like 2 streets down from where I grew up. Like you live in Roscoe and like Woodman, like we live in the same area, and like that area it was normal for us, but it's not the area that medical students grew up in. Like Roscoe, Woodman, not the world, but they grew up in, not even close, you know. And it's like giving those reasons or having those reasons in your head of like having a stable income in the future, having a stable career, having a respected, esteemed career. Like these are thoughts that like a lot of other students in like other communities, more privileged communities, generally speaking, take for granted that we don't. And that's why we can have those thoughts, and that's okay to have them. Like, don't feel guilty for having them. It might not get you through all of med school like happily, but it won't, but it's okay to have them. Because you have a unique scenario. Again, I don't know everyone's story here, but that was our story.
Yeah, money alone and like financial reasons will not get you through this. I thought they would when I was an undergrad student. I really did. I was like, oh no, I can like put my head down and get through all this. If you're smart enough to make it all the way to med school, you could have made as much money as you're going to be making throughout this career doing so many other things. You're bright. If you make it that far, you're clearly a very bright person and you have excelled in any field you went into. So finance or money may be a reason to be interested in it. It won't be the reason you come out of medicine.
Yeah.
You will not come out of residency or medical training thinking that like, yeah, I did this to be a millionaire. If you do this to be a millionaire, you're like the smartest idiot, and like you're an idiot. Like you that's not the reason to do this, you know.
If
like,
you make it through, you're the smartest idiot.
Yeah, like this is really not like the field where you become a millionaire. Like this is the field where you'll have a good life. You'll have a very stable income. Your family will never want for anything. You'll be able to provide for your families, but you won't be rich. And I know to us, like to me, you know, Dr. is rich. But once you meet these people and like kind of experience more in the world, you realize like this isn't what rich is. This isn't what like being wealthy really is.
Have you guys ever worked with doctors, like in a volunteer like hospital, and like not like plastic surgery like clinics and like or orthopedic clinics, but like hospital doctors? I really look at them and go like, you're not rich. That's like what you start realizing as you go over time. You're like, you're not rich. you're happy, and I'm happy you are. Like you're great, but you're not rich. Like you see them, you're like, yeah, nope, that civic's not rich. You know, like you start realizing that over time.
But again, like that's not what this is for.
Exactly,
like,
it's not what
this
for.
Field is not for that. Like you could go into finance, but what are you doing? Like what change are you doing for the world? Like whose lives are you improving? Who are you doing something that's going to make you proud? Are you doing something that's going to make your kids proud of you at the end of the day? Like these are, if you have kids, like these are the things that medicine does offer that's really unique to it compared to other things, is that we impact people's lives, and these are human beings, like people who need help, and not every field can offer that. That's why I
Like
didn't do
Robert,
law
yeah.
partly.
Like you're never gonna like take like Rob, like in a few years will be taking out like cancerous kidneys. Like you'll be removing them from somebody's body and saving someone's life. In the future, if I do cardiology, let's say, like I'm gonna be taking out a literal blockage in someone's heart, like out of like a vessel, like that's saved their life. You know, like those things are the romantic part of medicine, but that's what keeps you going. It is medicine. That's what you can do in that field, and you can't do that necessarily in other fields if you have that mentality. Of course, if that's your goal. It's your mentality. It's a very unique field in that sense. So it feels good.
More questions? We went off on a little tangent and a rant there.
It's an important rant.
If there are no more questions, on behalf of APS, we want to thank you guys for giving us your time and giving us this talk. It really helped. And I'm pretty positive everyone here is going to be using whatever you told us in our futures. And we really thank you for everything.
And I'm going to type my email in the chat. If you guys, I'll put my phone number as well. If you guys ever want to reach out to me, or if you have any questions, I am more than happy to help you guys out. If it's something like, you want me to read your personal statement, very happy to do that. With the caveat, please give me a lot of time, or else you might be sorely disappointed when I don't get to it, or it's late by the time I get to it. So there you go. Any questions you have about urology, about medical school, I'm always happy to answer them. Colin might be much better for questions like closer to undergrad. But if it's like medicine related questions and medical school and on, I'm very happy to answer any questions you guys have.
Likewise.
Thank you guys again so much. This was such a big help. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thank you guys.